All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and talk about running now. Running is one of those things that people love to hate, right? There's so many different ways that people say it, like, oh, you see me running, something's chasing me, you better run too, or whatever, right? There's all kinds of ways. But for the most part, people hate it because, growing up and whatever, it was a punishment, right? It was something that, maybe they had some shame around, maybe it hurts, and it sucks and they feel forced into doing it, or they feel like they have to do it to be healthy or lose weight or whatever. There's all these negative things that get wrapped around running. And if that's the way you feel about it, of course it's going to suck, right? And it never will get better. So, the first thing we have to understand when it comes to running is that running is a skill, okay? Just because you were doing it since you were 2 years old doesn't mean that you were doing it right the whole time, right? Or doing it with the greatest mechanical advantage, right? So, if we want to start treating running as a skill and start actively working to get better at it, not only is it going to feel much better, you might even start to like it. It could happen. In fact, I've seen it happen. Maybe it won't happen to you, no pressure or anything, but the more you treat it this way, the more benefit you're going to get out of running and the better it's going to feel. So let's start talking about what that looks like. All right, so first up, most of the time when people think about running, they think about pushing off with their feet, and that's how it's how you move forward, right? It's by pushing with your feet. Well, if we really look at things mechanically and how it really should work, we actually want gravity to do the job. Okay? So let's play with this a little bit. So if you get in neutral spine, right, nice and tall, and you go stiff as a board and you start to tip forward, what happens? I took a step, right? Now my brain didn't want me to fall on my face, so it threw my foot out in front. But I just traveled a whole step and it didn't cost me anything. The only thing I had to do was put my foot down, right? Cool. So I just got forward motion for free. Like, if we stop to think about that for a minute, like, that is craziness. Like, that is awesome, right? It really is. And so if we want to get really efficient with running, really want to make running work for us, having gravity on our side and using it to our advantage is how we do that. So if I put my foot out here, where my brain wants it to go, it's going to stop me from falling. But if instead of putting it out there, I let my foot go right here, and I shorten that step, I get more movement, right? I get to fall past my foot. Cool. So, feeling this falling sensation and being able to control that angle is kind of the first step in feeling what it's like to let gravity push you. And so, one drill that we use for this is called the penguin run. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get nice and neutral, nice and tall here. I'm going to go ahead and start leaning, and then when it's time to fall, I'm just going to try to keep controlling that fall and try to maintain that angle and move my feet really nice and quick so that I can keep moving, okay? So I want you to go ahead and try the penguin run. You can, go, 5-10 meters and come back, do it a couple times if you want. But you might find that there are some interesting things that your body's trying to do. Your brain might not like this at all, right? It might be doing everything in its power to try to slow you down. The other thing, besides putting your foot out in front of you that puts the brakes on, is braking at the hips. So if I go like this and I go, that stops me too, right? So if you really pay attention to, if you're looking around and you're watching people run, really pay attention to running form. A couple of the most common things you see people doing is they'll be running with broken hips. So their butt will be out like this, and their feet will be out in front, and they'll actually be taking that big step out onto their heel. And so both of those things are putting the brakes on. So you're literally fighting gravity, fighting yourself with every step while you're running. Sounds like that's going to suck a lot, right? It's going to be way harder than it needs to be. So the antidote then is I need to get tall through my hips, nice level hips, and I need to get on the ball of my foot. Okay? I need to get that foot closer to underneath me so it's not in the way. Nice. And so that's kind of where we need to go when we're developing a running form. Makes sense, right? Now, one other thing about running on your heel versus the ball of your foot. There's a tremendous amount of marketing and whatnot that went into the way, this heel striking form of running, where you run with this shoe that has this big heel on it that allows you to run out on your heel. Well, mechanically speaking, it's just not how it's supposed to work. The way you absorb shock, if you're going to put your heel out like this, all of this shock, which when you're running fast is like 4 to 5 times your body weight with every step, all that shock goes right into your bones and then into your soft tissues. Okay? If you're going to think about what the best shock absorber is, you're not going to think about the bone itself. You're going to think about this big steel spring right here. I've got my arch, I've got my calf, I got this whole leg that is ready to take this shock and rebound with it, right? And so when we walking, we go from heel to toe, and that's just fine. That's what it's built for. But as soon as you break into a run, slow jog to a sprint, whatever it is, make sure you're on the ball of your foot. Okay, that's what it's built for. Okay, so we did our penguin runs. We kind of feel that falling sensation. Now let's talk about what that running form actually starts to look like. Like, how do I straighten out those hips? How do I get those feet underneath me? What do I do? So if we're going to do it in place, we're just going to start by just walking in place like a march with this running stride. What I'm looking for is I'm going to have my foot tracking up right along the inside of my opposite leg, right? And it's like there's a string from my heel to my butt. So if I'm walking along, you can see that my heel's coming straight up underneath me. Now it's not like this, right? If I do this, these little muscles on the front of my hips are doing all the work of lifting my leg. If I do this, my hamstrings are doing all the work. My hamstring is a great big, powerful group of muscles, right? That's what I want handling the work of running, not these little hip flexors, right? See the difference? Make sure you double check yourself a lot, because it's really easy to slip in there. It may look like there's a big difference on the screen here, but in feeling it, it can be very subtle. Really make sure you flick that heel up to your butt. All right, let's go ahead and run in place a little bit. So it's the same thing. I'm pulling that heel up. I got my elbows in nice and close. I don't want this crisscross stuff. Everything's moving in the straight line with my direction of travel. Okay? I don't have my legs kicking out all over the place, doing all these goofy little river dance things. They're pulling straight up under my butt. Good. So that little running drill right there, if you just practice that an awful lot along with the falling, makes a big difference. The next big piece before we get into like actual run is your stride rate. So even if I'm using this good form, if I'm plodding and I'm taking these big steps where I'm coming down with my whole weight and absorbing it, I'm on the ground for a long time, right? I'm really fighting myself at that point. So on the other hand, if I have a really quick, light step, not only does it really reduce the shock on my knees and everything else, but it's way more efficient. It seems like it's not because you're moving faster, But because you're moving faster, you are working less for each step. And that makes the whole thing much more efficient. Okay, so I want a really quick, light step. So if I'm in here running, I'm just barely letting my heel touch the ground, and I'm pulling it straight up, I'm flicking it up almost faster than it comes down to the ground. Okay. All right. So if we're going to turn this into a run, we're going to use our penguin run to our advantage. So I'm going to fall into this, right? So I'm going to try to take that falling feeling and bring it into my running form. So if I do that, I'm going to start out with my penguin run, and I'm just going to start pulling my heels up. I'm kind of running out of room in here, but hopefully you get the idea. You start with that penguin run, and then you start pulling those heels up, and you pull into that running form, right? So you try to maintain that angle, get those legs moving, get those arms moving, and it's a great way to try to just hold it all together. Now you will likely want to go practice this a lot. You definitely practice this a lot, but if you start with the penguin run and you keep falling into that running form, and you maybe hold it for 10, 20 meters or whatever, and then when you lose it, you stop, do it again. As soon as you kind of lose that feeling, that falling feeling, stop, find it again, and go, right? That's a great way to really kind of learn how things are supposed to feel. And that's really what it takes, right? It's this self-awareness, this body awareness, that's really going to let you do not only running, but anything else that you want to do with your body. Okay. I think that is a pretty good little start, little running 101. At the end of the day, though, that can be kind of a lot to hang on to. So let's just kind of summarize and try to encapsulate some of this. So if I'm just going to think about a few very simple things, like they kind of hold all this together, I want to run tall. So I want to be nice and neutral. I want to really be tall through my hips, nice neutral hips. I want my hips nice and level while I'm running. All right, so run tall. I want to run light. So if I want to run light, that means my feet have to be super quiet, which means they got to be really quick. So the quicker your feet are and the more underneath you they are, the lighter you're going to be and the quieter they're going to be. Most of the time when you hear your steps, your feet are getting out in front of you, and that's where that's coming from. Okay, that little slap of the ground is your feet coming out in front of you. So we want to be nice and tall, nice and light, and we want to try and make it easy. Okay, so if you're like fighting yourself while you're doing it, or you're messing around, like it should be easy. So we need to be able to relax into it. Okay, so if we can be tall, we can be light, we can make it easy, hold all that stuff together. That's really what we're looking for. Okay, if you can do that, running is going to be so much more enjoyable for you. You're going to get so much more out of it, and you might even start to like it at some point. It's possible. Okay. I think that